Javelins, freelancers, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another update from Anthem Universe. I am one of your hosts, Gaz, and today we are talking Anthem improvements. Now, some of you may be familiar with some challenges for both the PC and Xbox players to this point. Challenges from loading screens, server challenges, some annoyances, and some rocky elements to Anthem have meant that some freelancer experiences have not been stellar, but to be fair, a lot of those have been addressed in conversation and are being responded to by BioWare quite rapidly. In particular, two have been addressed already, one that relates to an exploit and another we'll talk about shortly. So it's assuring that they've got that on side. Now, as you know, Anthem does have a very server-centric philosophy, and that is a very good thing because it means that BioWare can be agile and get to these fixes quickly. Unfortunately, it doesn't replace or excuse some of the bugs that we've seen, but that said, I'm pretty positive, hopefully as some of you guys are in the Anthem Universe community, that these will and are being addressed, in particular with a large patch rolling out, of course, on February 22. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, some of the expectations and things you can see, quality of life and improvements coming out in the next couple of days. The first section related here is general, and number one for this is improved loading times. So they have looked at how loading times are occurring, and to be honest, it's essentially a challenge with the Frostbite engine and how it accesses data. There's been some great posts on Reddit recently reflecting on the amount of data streamed from hard drives in order to play Anthem, and let's just say it's quite excessive compared to most typical games. The amount of accessing of hard drive information required and the load in and load out of data is very heavy currently in Anthem, and that is essentially a process of how the Frostbite engine currently works. In order to rectify that, they've implemented some improvements to load times. There's been some areas where people are getting shot by invisible enemies in free play, which is essentially, again, a streaming hard drive related issue, and this patch coming has been said to improve things. Traditional hard disk drives have not been performing well. I myself originally installed the demo on a hard drive, on a physical HDD, and saw less performance. I installed the full game on an SSD, which if you have access to on your PC, I strongly recommend you do, regardless of this fix. If you're running on Xbox, we've also seen similar conversations to installing on a portable SSD if you do have access to one. And to be fair, look, that's not just unique to Xbox, that's with many other games on the Xbox as well. So again, if you've got access to an SSD drive, use that please. I strongly recommend it. Obviously, there will be fixes to this hard drive loading issue, but at the same time, we'll have to see how that fares. Number two, weapons and gear all have numbers. That sounds strange, but there has been a bit of an issue where some weapons and gear are not appearing with their numbers. Those have been rectified, and you will now see, of course, damage details of all weapons. It was only a few from my understanding, but it certainly was happening with some gear. Number three is relating to loot drops, and loot now drops for players who go down. So if you were going down during a battle, you were finding that if you got up or resurrected, the loot would not be there for you, and you would lose out. That has been rectified. Number four is stronghold bosses. Now, similarly to the problem before, we saw stronghold bosses not dropping physical loot. You were getting it in the expedition success screen later on, but now it's just reassuring that the boss will actually drop physical loot for you. Number five is timeouts in regards to echoes. That has now been fixed, which is an important improvement. Just some few problems happening with the echo collection. Some of you may know when you collect those little orbs, we were having difficulties where people were timing out, or people were disconnecting with the orbs in hand, and they were actually disappearing from the game map. Frustrating, but it has been fixed. Number six, opening a chest now counts for all players on the team. So it was happening in some instances where opening a chest, the loot for the team was not being instanced, and unfortunately certain players were not receiving it, only the main freelancer of the group. That has now been rectified. Number seven is audio disappearing. There's been a lot of bugs still, like in the old days in the demo, where music was dropping out. In particular, it's been happening with strongholds and 4-player firefights. Essentially, when there's heavy action on screen, the Frostbite engine is not handling it and the audio is dropping. They've looked at fixes for that, and they've mentioned that will come with the patch on February 22. Number 9 is the farming exploit that I mentioned earlier. There has been a farming exploit that was brought up in the last 24 hours that basically meant on Grandmaster 1 you could fly out into free play and start farming chests and get a very, very good loot drop rate, shall we say, in terms of the things you were able to acquire. That has been rectified. So in short, freelancers, the usual way to get masterworks and legendary gear is going to be strongholds, free play, and legendary contracts for your pleasure. Next, strongholds. Number 10 over the list is fixed server crashes after defeating final boss. There was a number of crashes occurring that has now been identified. Number 11 was fixed an issue where players get locked away from their fellow teammates in the turret mine. So some of you experienced that, where you're actually in the turret mine stronghold and players would progress forward and 1 or 2 players would be locked behind a gate and you would not be able to progress. You could essentially stand there for the next half hour while your teammates finished the stronghold, but that was not very exciting. Gear and weapons. Number 12. The bonuses received from leveraging certain combos of suit via inscriptions now works. So we saw there was a few issues with that. Inscriptions weren't having the impact they should have. That has now been rectified. Number 13. Salvaging equipped items is now disabled. So if you accidentally salvage an equipped item, well, you can no longer do this. That is a good thing. Excellent. Number 14, I think the biggest changes to this patch update are those of the Colossus. Now the Colossus Javelin can now shield and revive at the same time. I repeat, the Colossus can now shield up and revive people at the same time. That is going to be an epically important quality of life improvement for the Colossus fans. Secondly to that, the Colossus can now activate the shield more quickly just after using an ability. So there's quite a lag delay that was happening before, and now things will get much better for the early squishy Colossus. Number 16, Storm's ultimate exploit is now fixed. Some people were farming that one where you could constantly or rapidly engage the Storm ultimate. That has now been fixed. Number 17, Primer and Detonator icons have been added to the Interceptor's gear. So there's a number of gear by the Interceptor that you had that did not have the icons on there. That has now been fixed. Number 18, additional mouse and keyboard improvement controls. For the PC users, again, mice and keyboard fixes are on the way. I gotta say on this one, I've just gone back to controller. I've talked about this before in previous videos, but I just can't get the hang of flying and swimming with those PC controls. I'm sticking with controller for now. Hopefully these updates will make a difference, and I'll go back to my beloved keyboard and mouse very soon. The UI changes. Number 19, Xbox One settings now save. Oh my goodness, a problem was occurring where Xbox settings were not saving on exit. That has been fixed. Number 20, the edge of HUD now pulses to indicate enemies nearby. So there is a flash indicator that will appear on each side of your screen to indicate where enemy fire is coming from. That is a very important quality of life improvement. Very pleased to see it in here. Number 21, Tarsus will now notify you when you're in Tarsus if you are at your limit of vault items. That limit is currently 250, by the way. That's the main bug fixes that you can expect for February 22. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many more items in there. These are the ones that I felt that I'd call out that are main quality of life improvements that have been probably annoying people or being quite frustrating. Needless to say, obviously the game is not perfect. There are still things to be fixed. EA are collecting feedback. I'll put the links to the Feedback General forum in the description for the video, as well as bug tracking that they are doing as well. The good news of all this is that, again, the server-side nature of Anthem means that this stuff can happen quickly. It's good to see they're reacting and they're responding, and I hope other freelancers out there will give them the patience to do so, although at the same time I do understand reviewers and other people out there playing this game and I guess losing patience with these challenges. It is a frustrating experience for some, and I understand that, but getting the patience here is going to be important. In light of all this, here's some 2 positive things. A feel-good story I read recently was that someone joined their friends on lower levels to help them out. And even though they were getting very crappy drops, of course, well, crappy comparatively, good for them, the other player who was helping them, the Sherpa, was getting legendary and masterworks for their efforts. That is a great story. I know that sounds like an obvious perhaps story, but it's something that we haven't seen in every game and looter shooter, and I love that. So great stuff. Some pro tips to wrap this out. If you start a mission normally, they actually matchmake you into the first minute or so of a mission. Okay, so if you are starting normally, just a general mission type, you will get matchmake to any other players as long as they are within 60 seconds of the commencement of that mission. So if you sort of notice you're suddenly bumped into something, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? I'm not on the base of Fort Tarsus. That's because that's the essential capability of the matchmake process. If, however, you're using quick play, it will be left open for the full mission. Okay, so if you choose the quick play option, you'll see exactly every single piece of animation from Fort Tarsus onwards. But if you choose a normal mission, it'll matchmake you to the first 60 seconds of an existing mission ongoing. That's not too bad if you think about it. There's nothing that really happens in the first 60 seconds of most, in my opinion. But if you're really pedantic, pick the quick play option. The second one, if you get a message that says server will shut down in X00 hours, blah, blah. Pro tip, X is actually in hours. So if it says 1:29, it means X is actually 1 hour. So all it means is that you better finish that current mission within the next hour and 29 minutes. The mission slot will close down for you. Well, you know, that sounds a bit odd at first, and I think they could probably change that. It's a confusing message. It kind of freaks people out, and they think that their session's going to end in the next minute. In fact, it's not, as I said, it's actually an hour increment that it's talking about. So when you see the X value, it's actually saying it will close in an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is. Don't place too much attention. Don't place too much importance on it. Just get on with the mission, get it done. I mean, if you're in a mission or free play, you're going to be out in those scenarios within that time frame anyway. But I do suggest that they fix that message. It is confusing as hell for freelancers. Look, that's just my 2 cents on this. It's been a challenging time, but it's also been a great time. The people hitting strongholds, hitting GM1, some up there getting masterworks and legendary gear is happening time and time again. People are still going through the story in their early days. Some people are up to level 5 and 10, some people up to level 30. Don't rush it, get in there, enjoy the gameplay mechanic, enjoy the gameplay loop. There are some challenges, but guys, they're coming with fixes, thick and strong. February 22 awaits, and of course, more to come from Anthem, and of course, everyone at Anthem Universe. Guys, be patient, much love. Join us on the Twitter at Anthem Universe, jump into the Discord and have a chat, discord.anthemuniverse.com, and be part of the greater Anthem Universe. I'm going to leave it there. I am Ogaz for Anthem Universe. Javelins, freelancers, we will see you next over the wall.